regulations that are out of date, unreasonable, and burdensome on Kansas businesses. Over 2012 and 2013, he signed into law the largest tax cuts in Kansas history. The top state income tax rate fell from 6.45% to 4.90%, and taxes on business profits from partnerships and limited liability corporations, which passed through to individuals, were eliminated. When his tax cuts became law in 2012, Governor Brownback predicted great things. Our new pro-growth tax policy will be like a shot of adrenaline into the heart of the Kansas economy. The new governor of Kansas made big promises, but simultaneously admitted that putting his plan in place would be a real live experiment. The hypothesis was that the middle class would be strengthened as lower taxes and lighter regulation encouraged the wealthy to invest more in Kansas businesses, creating new jobs and fueling economic growth. For those in the top 1% of incomes, Kansans making more than $400,000 a year, the effect of the tax cuts was to pay about $17,000 less on average. Meanwhile, the bottom 20%, making less than $20,000, would actually pay an additional $242 in total taxes, mostly due to the elimination of various tax credits. Brownback told his constituents this new tax plan would ultimately reduce neither government revenues nor government services because it would unleash so much economic growth. These tax cuts would, he said, pave the way to the creation of tens of thousands of new jobs and help make our state the best place in America to start and grow a small business. Once the evidence began coming in, it was clear that Governor Brownback's experiment was failing to deliver on his promises. Instead of reviving the American dream, he presided over a continuing trend of lackluster income gains for Kansas's working families, alongside rising gains at the very top of the income ladder. Menzie Chin, a professor of public affairs and economics at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, found that after the enactment of the tax cuts, economic growth in Kansas fell well below its pre-Brownback rate. Indeed, by the spring of 2017, job growth in Kansas was lower than most neighboring states, and not even half the national average. The tax changes also did little to spur business formation. For example, after they were enacted in 2012, the creation of new pass-through businesses, whose profits were no longer taxed at business rates but at their owners' individual tax rates, exceeded its 2011 level for 2 years but then dipped lower than it had been before. To pay for these ineffective tax cuts, Kansas made cuts to government services in education, pensions, and infrastructure, with the state's general fund spending per resident falling 5.5% from 2012 to 2016. This is only one of the many examples of politicians claiming their policy agendas would restore the American dream and not delivering on that promise. 5 years after Governor Brownback enacted his historic tax cuts, his own party turned on his ideas. The Republican-dominated state legislature saw the experiment for what it was, a failure. In the summer of 2017, opponents gathered a veto-proof majority and rolled back the tax cuts against his will. Yet this prominent example of a failed program of deregulation plus tax cuts for the wealthy did not put an end to similar experiments. On the heels of the Kansas failure, President Donald Trump in 2017 signed a tax bill that expands the federal deficit by $1.9 trillion over 10 years and gives a massive permanent tax cut to corporations, alongside temporary tax cuts to individuals, mostly benefiting those at the top of the income spectrum. And, like Brownback, Trump is focusing his energy on eliminating regulations. Today, it is more than evident that this mistaken approach to intervening in the economy has not delivered for the American people. Simple supply-side thinking by politicians such as Governor Brownback and President Ronald Reagan before him and Trump today reflects a very flawed understanding of how the economy works and is disconnected from the current empirical evidence. We'll see in the course of this book how applications of this